Okay, so we are now recording, and I'm going to switch over to the Brightspace. Go to Brightspace here. Okay, so you should be seeing Brightspace, and let's take a look at 372 content. Yeah. Let me take a look at that. Please mute your microphones if you can, guys. All right. So let's go ahead, take a look at table of contents. All right. So you have some homework assignments due tonight. As I said, I'll be grading something this week. The next homework. So you can look for that by the weekend. So we are basically, we've covered services and tools and a lot of scripting. So those were, more scripting intensive in the first couple of weeks, and that's only just to get you to practice a little bit. Going forward, there won't be as many scripts, but there will be still a few. Okay, so because the focus now will shift to other tasks, like, for instance, task scheduling and cron. So this is what we covered this week, right? On Tuesday, we went over this lecture. That video should be posted already, so you can take a look at it. And then just be aware, in 2 weeks, on week 6, on the Tuesday, we'll have exam 1. I believe grep and awk will probably be next week. So I'm going to move it there. All right, so let's take a look at task scheduling in cron. And you can see this is the PowerPoint slides. And if you download it, you should see it. So all the notes are there. Also go over data centers and networks. So I'm going to click on that. This is from your managerial book. Remember, these questions will also be, I don't know why, but these are not, this should be a nice reading. They're mostly like just guidelines and managerial things. So take a read through this one. I've summarized your book into these slides, so that should be easy read. And then this week, we also have, now this Wireshark assignment, I'm going to actually move and just call it Wireshark reading. So it'll be, so let's see. Okay. So you should be seeing Brightspace. I'm going to move this one out, but it will be homework. Okay, and I'm going to put that one in as a separate module here, just Wireshark reading 2. So let me do that now. We'll talk about that in a sec. So this is Wireshark reading 2. Okay, so hopefully with Wireshark reading 1, you kind of did that already, and you submit it. It's just a 1-page summary going through this. Wireshark reading 2. I'll add the file in here. That's fine if you only need to do 1-page summary. If some students like to do the whole thing and just for their own reference, that's perfectly fine. I just look at it. I just need some evidence that you did it. So either way is fine for me. but really you just need to do a one-page summary. So this, yeah, there it is. So you should be seeing the Wireshark reading. So let's start there. Yeah, exactly. So, you know, here you're using Wireshark from the point of view of sysadmin, but these readings should help you to just get a feel for how it works. So let's read through the next one. Wireshark, you know, week 3, 4, whatever it is. So as you can see, this is another one. This is now a little bit more focused on common lower layer protocols and latency issues. So you should be seeing this, I think. Yeah. Okay. So go through this one. This will be about MAC addresses, but it's the same idea. You will load some PCAP files that I posted from the original SIP file, load it up on Wireshark, and then kind of do the reading. And it'll provide some nice little details. I usually put checks where everything that's important. And then go through it, right, and complete your reading assignment. So that should be nice little reading. I'm going to create the assignment for this. Assignment. And like I said, you won't have one of these every week, but you're going to have one this week. So homework, Wireshark, reading 2, let's say. This will be due, so today's the 3rd, so we'll be due on the 10th by 10 p.m. And then it'll open now until, it'll stay open until Saturday. So complete the attached reading assignment. Provide a one-page summary. Okay, so that should be clear enough. So I'm going to save that. All right, so we can go back to table of contents so that you have, so that reading assignment has been given now. So now we can go back here. So I took that out. As I said, you have these two, basically these are slides, right? I also have this cron PDF. Look at that one. So this just has basically my notes from Tuesday, okay? So you can just read through that. It's pretty much everything I discussed on Tuesday. It's got the little format there. It's got the little table. Obviously, move this to your cheat sheet for your exam. And then it's got examples there of everything that we did. So that should be, or you can print it out, but you can't use this on the exam, right? So you'll have to make a summary of it. Does that make sense, guys? Is that clear enough? So now let's take a look at the assignment for today. So it should be a lot of fun. I think I just need to do a couple of things for the assignment, for you to complete the assignment. We'll do that. I believe I'm recording. Yeah, so we are recording everything. Looks good. So let's take a look at where we are here. So task scheduling in Cron. I'm going to click on this. And now all that remains is this. This is actually your homework assignment for this week, as you can see for Cron, besides the reading assignment. So let's click on that one. All right, and I'm gonna actually download this document and we're just gonna look at it as a Word document. Open it. I'm going to share that. All right, so you should be seeing the Word document now. This is your homework. You can use this as the initial template for your report. So as you can see, task scheduling with Cron, running scripts with Cron. This I moved to another module, so I'm just going to take that out of there. All right, and so a couple of things. A tool similar to Wireshark, I'm sure you've heard of it, is TCP Dump. It is a Linux facility for you to be able to it's a Linux facility for you to be able to, do the same thing. You're going to listen on a port. So basically, let's take a read through this. So create a file to dump all info produced by TCP Dump on the desktop. So this is the name of the file. So you can call it TCP Dump file.txt, whatever you want. And just be aware of where you're dumping the data. It'll show TCP Dump listening on port on, it's not going to say ETH0 for the CVM. I think it'll say ENSP03 or something like that. Then you're going to, once you start this on a terminal, leave the terminal alone. Just leave it running. Visit some websites and it'll start collecting some data. Okay. Then you can kill TCP Dump by just typing Control-Z. And then you can run this command, run strings TCP Dump file. So this is the file, this one, right? The one that you created that matches your, that's your log file, if you will. And you type this command, and then you're going to see some data. Now, to view a specific lines within that file, let's say you have 100,000 lines of text, but you're looking for something in particular and you just want to do a search, then what you're going to do is something that we're going to look at today, which is you're going to do sudo strings. That's one command. Then this little straight line here is called the pipe in Linux. And basically, it's literally like, imagine it's a pipe. You put a pipe and then you throw things into the pipe and they come out on the other end. So it's a way of redirecting information from one place to another in Linux, right? So, or from one command, or more importantly in the terminal, from one command to another command. So for instance, now you're going to take whatever's in that file, you're going to grab it and you're going to pipe it into another command called grep my keyword. So this command will take the output of this file, whatever would appear on the terminal, and it's just going to grep for a specific keyword, such as, yahoo.com or cnn.com. Does that make sense, guys? Do you guys understand what I mean by that? Are there any questions on that? Okay.
Pretty simple.
Pretty simple. Great. All right. So that's what you have to do. You'll play with that. And then, that's TCP Dump. So, that's part of just playing. It's, it's getting information, and in particular, kind of to, do a couple of things, including just understanding how pipe works, which, and I'll do a short lecture today on that. And so we'll hopefully get a better understanding. Then the topic of this week, as you know, is Cron Tab, so scheduled tasks. So I think I showed you on Tuesday how to open Cron Tab. So you do Cron Tab -E, right? And that'll open the Cron Tab. So let me actually do that just to make sure everyone is clear on that one. And then I'm on the file too. Remind me to re-upload that file because. All right, so let's go to Wireshark. Sorry, to CVM. Start it up. All right, I'm going to share now the VM. Share. Okay. So please stop me if there's any questions or issues you don't understand, but otherwise, let's keep moving. So this is our CVM. You should be seeing it. Type password. And as I said, Cron Tab E, right? So I want everyone to understand. We go to the terminal here. Let me make this smaller. And now you just have to type Cron Tab -E. when you do that, it might ask you to, the first time, it may ask you to select an editor. You can select Nano or VI, whichever one you're more comfortable with. And then now you have here, you notice, this is your cron tab. So basically the entries that we were doing would go here, right? So 5, that's the 5, and then the command. So for instance, commands. All right, so for instance, the command would be ls-l, right? Or one of the ones that we did in class, echo, hello, or something like that. Or more importantly, Python, my script, script.py, something like that. And then if you want to have another entry, then you would do, let's say 5, and then here, ls-l, right? So those are 2 individual entries. I would recommend for the lab, just have one enabled and disable the other ones, because there could be some conflict or something, but that's the idea. Don't just leave them in there. Also, once you're done, you can take them out, because remember, it'll just start doing that. So you probably don't want to have that going on. All right, so let's go back to the Word document. Okay, so we talked about this. So you've got Cron Tab, and then in the file, add basically these 2. So you guys should understand what this is, because we've talked about it on Monday. And then you can see we're doing uptime or echo. Notice here there's these 2 symbols. These are redirection symbols, so we'll talk about that today. And basically what's happening is, just like here, where you had a command and then you were piping it into another command over here, we're kind of doing the same here. You're going to take a command, uptime, which is how long the system has been running. You've seen this command before. And then you're going to save it into a log file that's located in your desktop. And then you do the same over here. Obviously, you type in your name in here, redirect it to a file. You'll need to change this for the day that it is today. So today is Thursday. And if you want to see it right away, it's currently 2:20. So you'll have to change it to, I don't know, 2:30, right? You want to see it, or 2:25, because you might want to see it in the next, you might want to see it in the next 5 minutes. Okay. And then that's it. So that's the first example of just using cron. Go through this little exercise. Then after that, what you want to do is you want to run a script with cron tab. So in that case, we're going to take a look just at a simple example of the scripts or log files. The default log files in Linux are located in the var log folder. So then you can go in there and take a look at them. For instance, messages or syslog, those are default log files. So just look at them, look at the end of them. So you can actually do, cat, and cat will show you towards, it shows you everything, but it really ends at the end. So you'll see the last few lines there. And then what you'll do is I'll give you a Perl script today. So you will see, although we don't cover Perl in this class, I do every now and then like to give you scripts from other languages, just so that you have a sense. Perl is an older version of like Python, so you'll see the syntax is not as nice as with Python, but still, it'll be just a nice exercise to log something. If you want to change it to Python, I leave that to you, but I'm not making it a homework assignment. All right, and so basically we'll go through that exercise. I need to give you that script. So set the cron tab to run the script every 4 minutes, okay? So you'll have to set that cron entry and then show evidence that it worked. And then finally, you have 4 problems here, right? And these are like the problems we did in class on Tuesday. So the problems are gonna be write a script and or cron entry to copy a file every Wednesday at 1 a.m. and save it in a specified folder. So obviously you wanna see it work, so you'll change it to the times that work for you, but also provide the entry for this one for the specific one I gave you. Then write a script and or cron entry to check user statistics, usage logins, etc. every day at 3 a.m. Summarize the results to a file, a log, etc. So some of these will require the use of cron and also a script. Okay. On the third one, write a script and or cron entry to perform a cleanup, delete unimportant files in the temp folder several times a day, such as every hour, or every 30 minutes. I recommend put a file in the temp folder and then delete that one. And then write a script and or cron entry to capture network traffic with TCP dump, which you saw above, every day at 4 a.m. and extract some information from the extracted packet captures. Does this make sense? That's your homework for this week, which ties directly to the lecture. All I have to give you is that Perl script, and we're going to talk a little bit about redirection today. Let's go ahead. Let's share. Go back to Brightspace. So you should be seeing Brightspace now. Go back to table of contents. Okay, so we are here. This is the document that I just looked at, right? So I'm going to delete that one and just upload the updated one. This one. That's the one. And I'm gonna. Okay. All right. So that's basically it. The next, so the document is there, and this is your. Now let me create the assignment also, just so that this is set. This is gonna be homework. Cron. Yeah. And let's just say this is going to be due on the 10th by 10 p.m. It'll open now, and it'll stay open until the 12th, which is Saturday. Complete the attached word or the attached or the problems in the attached Word document. Is this clear enough?
Yes.
So I'm going to save that document, and then you have everything basically. So now let's go over the Perl script. So I'm going to switch over to the virtual machine so that we can actually take a look at that one. These files are in there, assignments. Okay, all's good. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at that. I'm going to close. So you should be seeing the VM now. I'm going to close this. I'm going to navigate to the desktop. ITS 372, spring 2022. Right, and then we're going to do a script here on that topic. Any questions so far? No questions? All right, good. So this Perl script is pretty simple, really. It's not very long. It sounds like. So let's create it. Let's call it write to log. So remember, we are writing to the logs, the built-in logs in Linux, which are located in var log. Okay, so we're going to take a look at those. So now the extension is going to be PL because it is a Perl script, not Python. Okay, so let's go ahead here. You can specify, if you make it an executable, where to find the interpreter for this by doing user bin, and most likely it'll be Perl. Okay, and then now we're going to add just a couple of modules so that we can get warnings, etc. So use strict. Remember, this is a script. So I'd compile, either compile time checks. And then we're gonna do use warnings. Warnings. Okay, and this is also for runtime warnings, basically. Okay, and then after that, we're going to call the library for syslog functions. So syslog, remember, it is a Linux facility that allows you to log efficiently. You know, you can have multiple computers and all are logging their information and sending it out. So here we can say use syslog, right? And then QW, and we're going to specify here the default socket for this. So it's going to be set log for socket. So this is basically calling, I have a comment up here. Notice the pound signs are comments. It's a library for syslog functions in Perl, for Perl. And Python will have its own equivalent ones. Then you're going to use a Unix domain socket. So you're going to set it, set log socket. And you're just going to say Unix for the communication to take place. So we can add a comment, use a Unix domain socket. Okay. Then after that, we actually run the things that we want to do in order to save our data. So we're going to do open log, and then we're going to say, we're going to call the logger, call it logger.pl. We're going to also send out the PID. The PID is the process ID. So that should appear in the log itself and the user, which in this case should be C. Okay, so this information should be registered. Let's say register user info. Okay. And then after that, we actually tell it what to log. So we're going to say syslog info, and it's going to be your name. So let's say, oops, say for name, you know, PNW, or you can put in, you know, your own name. So let me write your name in there. All right, and that should be it. After that, you just close it. So I'm going to do close log. That's it. So this should work. Okay, this should work. If I run this now, let me do Control X, Y. Let me do it clear here, and I do Perl. Okay. Missing. All right, so I'm missing probably a semicolon. I see I'm missing one here. This Perl uses semicolons, as you can see. So Control X, Y. Try it again. All right, so it ran this time. So now I'm going to navigate to the var folder. You can see I'm there. ls-l. -l. And then in there, there's log. You can see that one. So I'm going to clear cd into log. There's a lot of files in here. So I'm going to check the syslog first. So I'm going to do cat syslog. Okay. There's my entry. You see that, guys? So this is logging a lot of other things, obviously, that are related to the operating system, a lot of VM logging, it seems. But if you notice, this was my entry, right? Logger PL, there's my Ph.D, and then remember I wrote your name. Now, it obviously runs. Now, what you have to do is run it at specific intervals of time using cron. All right, so could you go back to the code so I can snag it? So I'm gonna go back to it, and this is gonna be in the video recording also. So anyway, this is where I am, PWD, right? So that's the location where you can find the log file. And then I showed you the command to open it, pretty simple. Now let's go ahead, oops. Let's go ahead and let's go back to the desktop. So I'm gonna go directly to home, seed. Oops. Dots are for hidden files, by the way, but that's not what I meant to do. So here, I'm going to go to the desktop again, just so I can find my Perl script. So I'm going to do 372, right? And there we go. So the file that I have in question is write to log.pl. So I'm going to go nano. And there you go. That's your code. So I'll leave it there for a few minutes so you guys can get it. And as you can see, it's pretty simple. The goal is really to show you some other scripting languages. Use that one or write it in Python if you want. That's also perfectly fine. Any questions on that?
So how is Perl different from Python? It looks pretty different. So what does it actually do that Python can't do?
Yeah, so it uses like importing libraries. It's similar to that. What was your question? Sorry.
Oh no, my question was what does Perl do differently than Python?
Doesn't, I mean, it's.
Well, they're the same in a way.
How is Ford different than a Toyota?
All right, yeah, I see your point.
Yeah,
that makes sense. Thank you.
They're just things, right? So Perl is older, I can tell you that. Perl was there and it was used, and then people came up with Python 20 years ago, I think. And Python is definitely like easier. There's no semicolons, right? So for, so things like that. It's just the syntax is a little bit nicer.
Different. Okay.
But basically, Toyota, Ford, it's a car. So.
I also noticed it differentiates between single and double quotes.
Sorry, say that again.
It differentiates between.
Oh yeah, there's definitely like a syntax difference for sure. So like I said, Python does not use semicolons, and I mean, just look at the popularity of, look it up online between Perl and Python, and you'll see the huge difference. So it's just preference of people. Usually what makes a scripting language take over another one is ease of use, efficiency, and availability of libraries. So Python has all of those because it's got ease of use, it's got an almost infinite number of libraries, and it's efficient because you can write your programs in C++, And you just use Python as an interface. So you program in Python, but when it's running in the background, it's running in C. So an example of that, for instance, is the NumPy library. For those of you that took the 265 course, NumPy, all those routines are written in C in the background, but you do the coding in Python. Does that make sense? Any other questions, guys?
Yeah, my code wasn't working actually. Like,
All right, so you want to share it then? Give me a second.
yeah.
Close that. I need to enable. It should be enabled now, right? So go ahead and share. Can you share your?
You see it?
I don't see it. So let's see the code then. Warnings has an S at the end.
Oh.
Second line. And then also you guys, if anybody sees anything else, point it out.
Okay.
Don't run it yet. Let me just.
Oh, go back.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that. It looks good to me, so run it. Default is not okay. So go back to that line where default appears.
This one, right?
Don't leave a space between colon and default. Don't leave a space. Okay, try it again. Yeah, there you go. So as you can see, this is an example that Perl is less forgiving, right? One's missing space, and Bash is also like that. They're less forgiving, and that's why these have become Python. Make sense?
Yep.
Right. You can stop sharing if you don't have any more questions. All right, so let's go ahead. Let's go back to. Is there another question, guys? I wouldn't say that Perl is obsolete. There's still a very loyal fan base of Perl, but certainly it's a competitive world. All right, so I think that's the handout, right? And you guys know what you need to do for the lab. I've gone over the example. Now, if you want to do something every 5 minutes, every 5 minutes, let's say, I'm going to do an example of that. Now, I think I didn't do this one in class on Tuesday, but if you want to do, or actually, let me ask you guys, how would you define a cron entry where you run a script every 5 minutes? How would you do it? How would you do it? All right, let's see. For loop. In cron, you're not going to have for loops, right? You only have one entry, remember. So in the cron tab, that, based on what we learned on Tuesday, that's, that language, that syntax, whatever it is of Linux, how would you run that entry every 5 minutes? Any ideas? You should know one for sure. Maybe not as efficient. Because what if I say every 2 minutes? How would you do it? Anyone? That's a good answer. Yeah, yeah. That's a good one. So yeah, exactly. So as Fabian answered, I was expecting you guys to say first like 5, 10, 15, you know, create that list for that entry. But as Fabian indicated, if you want to, a more, you know, this is going to take a long time, right? Because it's 20, 25, you know, 30, I'm already tired. And, you know, what if I said every 2 minutes? So that's a lot. A more efficient way of writing every 5 minutes in the entry, for instance, is to do *5, right? So this is your entry. And basically, when you do that, you'll be able to run basically whatever your command is, running a Perl script, etc., every 5 minutes. Okay, guys? Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. All right, so we talked about the lab. So I really don't have that much left for today. And as I said, the rest of it will be open lab for you to ask questions.
I have a quick question about these cron commands.
Go ahead, please.
When you put these into the cron tab page, in the
Yes.
future, if you want the command to stop repeating itself, would you just go back in there and then delete it? Or is there some other process?
You can comment it out, yeah. The basic, you enter something, and based on this language that we learned on Tuesday, that's what defines how it's going to run, period.
But the commands stay in that same page. If
They
you want to
stay-
edit it in the future, you
Every
just-
entry, it stays there forever now. There, unless you automate it, you could automate something where you even flush out cron and then put in new commands. You could think of something like that, but without something like that, you enter and you put an entry in there, it'll just do it. Do you understand? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, so yeah, that's a good question. So the entries are there, and based on whatever you know, based on this, right? That's what defines how it's going to run. And you saw you can set it weekly, you know, special day of the month, or every day, you know, it's entirely up to you. Okay, so we've talked about every 5 minutes. So that's done. And then we've got okay. So yeah, so that's basically for today. Oh yeah, the last thing we're going to talk about today is redirection, right? As I said, it's a very short topic. You'll be using it a little bit, so kind of makes sense. Okay, so let's talk a little bit. I'm going to go to a new line here. And this is going to fall under output handling. I'm sure this is in one of the notes I posted, so you can check it out there. But we're going to call this output handling. Okay, so output handling just basically has to do with this idea of sending things from one command to the other. So imagine if this is the command line, right? It's like that. I'm actually not going to use this symbol. I'm just going to use the actual real symbols of the terminal, which are this one and that one, right? So one is for regular user, one is for a root user. So let's just focus on regular user. It works the same for both. Sometimes you might have, let's say, command. You might have command 1. And then command 1 produces some output, which is usually what goes on the terminal, right? We always see something on the terminal. But then you want to redirect that. Let's just say, you know, I'm going to draw like an imaginary thing, redirect, right? Something like that. And you send that to command 2, all within the same terminal. This is what I want you to understand. You're still on the terminal writing all of this. So you have several options for redirection, and this is called output handling, okay? Some of the symbols are something like that, or it is the pipe, okay? So, or combinations of that. But these are the symbols that you can use basically for redirection, okay? So as we talk about this, then we're going to say that for output handling, we have basically a few options, right? We have something called, you know, let's say redirecting to a file. Right? And that's going to be an example of that is, for instance, 2 ampersand 1 you know, and then redirection file, right? So you see something like that. You will see these things and they might seem meaningless to you, but they actually have meaning, okay? So we'll talk a little bit about that. Or we have another one, piping, that you've heard me talk about before. As in pipe, right? So piping, and then we can say through something. So for instance, piping through mail. And then we can say here, an example of this would be 2, 1, pipe, and then mail, the mail facility route. So this basically means that we're going to take whatever, these are actually variables. We'll see that in a second. So values in variable are going to get piped into another command, which in this case is the mail service of Linux by default. So that mail service will send basically the information to root. So that is if you wanted to just you know, send stuff to a specific, the root user, for instance. And then another one that you probably may have seen before is discarding data. Like when you run a script and you don't want that script to write data to the terminal itself. So you can do, so this helps a lot, like when you write scripts for different things and the scripts are calling commands, but you want to suppress the output to the terminal, right? So this is usually referred to as discarding to, and then basically to dev null. So funny enough, as we talked about the file system, so you guys know this is the file system. We talked about how we have, and we'll more formally discuss the different folders later in the semester, but we know we have the home, right? You've gone to that a lot. That's where your desktop is. Today we went to var log. There's bin. You saw that in the script. User, that also has user bin. There is a folder called dev, where basically dev stands for devices. That's where you have your devices in your system. And there is, you know, devices would be like the keyboard, the printer, you know, different kinds of devices, mouse, etc., camera. But in this case, there is a device called a dev null device. And what that basically means is like a black hole, right? So your computer is connected to a black hole. Whenever you want things to disappear, you send them into that black hole of Linux, and that's accessed by dev null, right? So basically it just discards it and it goes away. Does that make sense, guys? Any questions? Now, the question you might ask yourself is what does this mean? And you saw me write that. So what does that mean? Right, so you might ask yourself that question. So basically these numbers are actually like they're references to things in memory. So the 2 alone refers to the second file, descriptor of a process. Of the process. All right, which in this case is usually standard error. So we're going to learn later on that actually behind the scenes, there is something in the terminal and in Linux instead in general called standard error or standard out. And it's a mechanism that's working kind of when you're typing things in the terminal that allows you run a process, you run something. It's got these 2 variables associated with it, standard error and standard output, which basically record the data that goes to the terminal. And also if there was an error, the error is recorded. So whenever you want to reference that, you can just reference it by this 2. And we'll see an example of that. That's usually the standard error. Now, so that symbol is addressed, right? So this one. Now this one, the next symbol is as you know that we've already discussed that one. That's just a redirection. So it means redirection, send basically. Okay, so you're just going to send out some data over there. And then the last one, so that's addressed. And then the last one is actually these 2 together, okay? And so that one is going to be the &1, and that means the other variable. Instead of standard error, instead of that one, it means standard out. Okay, standard out, and basically the standard out is the output of the process. So this is the output of the process, like that. Okay, so basically then, if we put it all together, we can say that, so 2 &1 redirects standard out and standard error to somewhere, depending on where you're sending it, like dev null or a file. Okay, so that's why, we can do then, 2 &1 redirection dev null. And that's basically how that works. You guys see that? Is this clear enough, guys?
So the 2 stands for second file.
It's the standard error, yes.
What does the greater than sign do again?
The redirection. So if I go back, notice there's that one, and that one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're just redirecting the data. We're sending it somewhere.
Okay, so we're sending the data to file 1. Okay.
Basically.
Sweet, thank you.
Okay. All right, guys. So that's just an example of redirection. We'll see a lot more of that later on in the semester, but because this is really powerful, as you will see. Linux, any script that you write is going to be a lot slower than anything that you do in the command line itself. Linux has a lot of built-in processes, functions in the kernel itself. And so knowing how to use those and redirect in the terminal itself with pipe, etc., is going to be very, very useful. Okay. So anyway, hopefully that makes sense. But we'll see many more examples of that later in the semester. So for now, that's all I wanted to cover today. So the rest of the time, it'll just be open lab. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. I'm going to stop the recording now.